Monday, January 14th, 2019. This is the regular City Council meeting for the City of St. Peter. It is 7 o'clock p.m. We will call the meeting to order. All please join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First up tonight, we have a pretty special occasion again. We have oath of office for our newest council member, Mr. Paris. And Todd, you going to take care of this for us?
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Paris, if I can get you to stand up and raise your right hand. We're going to do this a little bit differently than we have in the past. So at the end, I'm going to ask you if you agree. And if you so, you say, I do. So, Roger Paris, do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and that of the state of Minnesota, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of council member in and for the city of St. Peter, Minnesota, to which office you have been appointed to the best of your judgment and ability? If so, answer, I do.
I do.
All right.
Thank you, Roger. Welcome back. Welcome back. Next, we have the agenda. Before I ask for approval of the agenda, we did on the cover sheet have a official City Council photograph set for this evening, which is on the schedule, which is going to take place now, hopefully in 2 weeks, because we are short one person here tonight. That being said, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of the agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Next, we have a minutes from our December 10th, 2018 meeting. Those minutes appear on pages 7 through 10. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes? Now, is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor of the minutes as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Those minutes are approved. Next, we will address visitors. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council on any agenda item? Seeing no one, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council on any matter whatsoever? Seeing no one, we will move to the consent agenda. Consent agenda begins in detail on page 11 and concludes with the resolution on pages 63 through 68, and it's quite lengthy, so bear with me tonight. Includes the following budgeted purchases in excess of $10,000. Professional Water Technologies for blanket order purchase for anti-scalant phosphate free for $25,000. To Univar for blanket order for sodium metabisulfine for $11,000. To Hawkins Inc. for blanket order of caustic soda for $40,000. To Chemosolv for 20,700 gallons of biosolid polymer for $29,394. Again to Chemosolv for 400,000 pounds of ferric chloride for $43,640. To Chemosolv for 9,200 pounds of pre-treatment polymer for $11,224. To Cargill for 150 tons of road salt for $12,500. To Bolton and Menk for the 2019 North 3rd Street Improvement Engineering bidding and bid service for $18,300. The St. Peter Herald is hereby designated as the official newspaper for the City of St. Peter during the year 2019. Following institutions are designated as official depositories for the city, all of them with a limit of $8 million. First National Bank, Nicollet County Bank, Citizens Community Bank, and Hometown Bank. Councilmember Kwame shall serve as Mayor Pro Tem in the absence of the Mayor for the period of January 1, 2019 through December 31, 2019. The following pages of rules and procedures which govern the operation of the city appears on pages 64 and 65 and partially on 66. I'm not going to go read them all. You can find them on our website. Next up, we have liaison appointments. I'm not going to go through them all, but there are a couple of changes. Going down to the tourism and visitors, instead of mayor, it should say myself, Zeman Pfeiffer. And then going down to appeals and adjustments, it should say Kwame Paris Zeman on that line. The following advisory board renewal, board appointments and renewal appointments. To the Economic Development, and the term is for, to fill out Jay Hansen's term, who passed away here this last fall, for 2014 to 2019, and that is for Carrie Johnson. To the Heritage Preservation Commission for 2019 to 2021 for Emily Blue, I hope I say her name, Bruflant, excuse me. To this next one's a renewal for Jan Glimsdahl to the Housing and Redevelopment Authority for 2019 to 2023. To the Library Board for 2019 to 2021. To Laurel, Pillars, and Laurel is here tonight with her mom, and thank you for coming and seeing how this kind of works. To Parks and Recs Advisory Board for 2019 to 2021. The first one is a renewal for David Kane. The next two are new, Sarah Nielsen and Laura Zender. Tourism and Visitors Bureaus for 2019 to 2021. These are both renewals, Jill Niebuhr and Robert Sandine. Next up, we have temporary licenses. An off-sale liquor license, St. Peter Baseball Association for 400 Union Street for February 9th, 2019. Solid waste hauler permits, and these are all for fiscal 2019, to Hanson Sanitation, Waste Management, and LJP Enterprises. The following employee appointment hereby designated effective December 11th, 2018, to Ryan Schaefer, police officer at 2677 per hour. Part-time employee appointments, Nick Rosa, Jason Sletta, and Michael Connor for part-time warming house attendants, to Charlotte Bennett and Sylvia Parent for part-time noon hour basketball clerk, and Diane Weiniger for the part-time certificate fitness instructor, Following elected officials shall represent the City of St. Peter on the Nicollet County Land Use Comprehension Plan Task Force, and that is Councilor Carlin. Plus, schedule of disbursements for December 5th, 2018 through December 19th, 2018, and December 20th through 2018 through January 9th, 2019. Are there any questions, comments on the consent agenda? Todd, I have a question on and this is something I probably should know, but I don't offhand. When we hire a police officer, do they need to live within so many minutes?
We have a prescribed response time, and so that response time is 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Question came up at another meeting after that.
Yeah. Generally, we provide a specific amount of time if potential employees are not living within that currently to move within that. Generally, that time frame is 6 months. I believe this one meets the criteria already.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions or comments? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move the consent agenda.
Second.
Any questions at this point? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Pierce.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Garland.
Aye.
Mayor Zimmerman.
Aye.
Councilmember Horn. Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Next, we have unfinished business, which there is none.
Yeah.
We just kind of the chuckling relates to every year we switch directions on the vote so that it is modified from time to time. So that's how that works.
So
Everybody's wondering, how come I'm next when normally I'm not next?
Roger, you have a lot of influence on Ed now. Next, we're going to move to new business, since we didn't have any unfinished business. First up, we have the 2019-2020 Water Fund budget. And Sally.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I'm here to go through the water fund budget for 19 and 20. We're asking for a 2-year approval. That starts on page 69 of the packet and goes through page 94. The operating budget is very similar to the budget that was approved in 2018 by the council. For 2019, there's a 0.3% increase. For the 2 years, we are not proposing any rate increases to the rates for the customers or the water access charges. The water access charges are based on the philosophy that newcomers should help pay for the catch up for investments in previous ratepayers. Previous ratepayers had paid to the infrastructure. Revenues are projected to be flat to the 2018 year end. This budget does not include new revenues to account for the new construction that took place in 2018. And just so you're all, I have the water consumption history listed on page 71. And as you can see, it fluctuates a little bit, and this budget is very weather dependent. If you look at 2018, we're projecting to have sold 314,888,039 gallons is our estimate, and that's an approximate decrease of 11,520 gallons from 2017. If you remember, we had a very wet spring, a little dry summer. About August, it dried up, and then it got very wet again in September. So it does fluctuate. We continue to have irrigation meters installed on new construction. No monthly base charges on irrigation meters, but there is a slightly higher cost per 1,000 gallons for the domestic rates. The budget does not include any revenues or expenses for the development of a service inline program, and that is more for you on TV and for the council. That's more like a protection of your lines coming into your house. We're going to investigate that and talk more about that through 2019 to see if we want to start doing that. So if something happens between the road and your house, how we'd help with that. But nothing's in the budget for that. The water fund will not transfer any dollars to the general fund for the next 5 years, based on using wastewater funds to allow revenues in the water fund to cover our current debt loads. Current debt is on page 70. They're listed out individually. There's a 2011B for the water tower. Debt service payment in 2019 will be $116,105. Remaining principal on that bond is $750,000, with a final debt payment in 2026. There's the 2012 water revenue bond, 12C. Debt service in 2019 will be $72,313. Remaining principal on that bond is $290,000, and the final payment of that is in 2023. There is the water treatment facilities in 2009 bond. 2019 debt service will be $1,274,768. Remaining principal on that bond is $11,293,000, with a final payment in 2029. We have the 2009 wells, and that has a debt service in 2019 of $90,657. Remaining principal of $721,000, with a final payment in 2028. And then the Highway 169 water main, there's a final payment of in 2029. I missed part of that on my cut and paste. Sorry about that. Debt service for that will be $51,806.50, with remaining principal of $472,000, and final payment in 2029. And then there's the 870 TIF bonds for some improvements in 2010. Debt service for that in 2019 will be $8,985, with remaining principal of $8,840. Final payment will be in 2020. And that is split between water and wastewater. GO revenue bond 2017, the repainting of the water tower. Debt service on that in 2019 will be $56,763. Remaining principal is $405,000, and final payment in 2028. We have capital, which is on page 79. We have a capital plan for the next 10 years out there. But for 2019, the major capital purchases will be $75,000 for this St. Julian filter rehabilitation, $80,000 for SCADA updates at the St. Julian and Broadway water plants. That's a computer-aided system for those plants. Total AMI meters in this year for 2019 will be 100,000, split 50-50 between water and wastewater. So there's 50,000 in the water fund. $10,000 for Community Spirit Park for water infrastructure that will also be funded by contributions to the Parkland Dedication Fund. Any deficits being contributed by the utility fund. The 2019 and 2020 capital improvement items are identified on the capital plan, and there's other items about 81.7 for operating improvements throughout this budget. We will come back mid to late third quarter of 2019 and review where we're at for 2019 in capital, and then what the 2020 list will look like. So right now there's placeholders out there. We'll come back and we'll go through them so you guys so we know what we want to spend in 2020. So just the heads up on the 2-year plan. Wages and benefits are recorded in areas where work is actually performed. For the budget purposes, wages and benefits are allocated based on a 3% wage increase for the 2 years and approximately a 10% increase in health insurance. There are no bond issues until 2023, new bond issues until 2023. This could change with a number of factors, but is not illustrated in our cash position. We have membrane improvements scheduled for 2020, 2026, and 2032 in the amount of $180,000 for each year. All other years, replacements are around $36,000. The total ending fund balance for the water fund in 2019 is projected to be $396,000, and in 2020, the amount will be $42,632. Our goal for this fund is to be at about $1.4 million. Negative cash balances in the future are not a big concern right now, but we will keep an eye on it as each year is completed. Due to the relationship of water and wastewater funds, one of the easiest ways to keep rates from escalating is to transfer resources from wastewater. As wastewater debt is being paid off, as the wastewater debt is paid off, we'll transfer funds to the water fund to offset the increasing debt in water. We have a resolution. We are asking for resolution to approve the water fund on page 95 of the packet. The 2019 budget is $3,430,938 for 2019, and for 2020 it's $3,397,927. Again, we'll come back for purchases over $10,000 and present them individually to the council. Questions?
Questions for Sally?
Mayor members, this is one that you've gone through previously at workshops on at least 1 or 2 separate occasions. As Sally pointed out, and I think it's important to emphasize, you are going to continue to use wastewater funds, and as we've talked before, lose debt within the wastewater fund. That's helping to buoy up your water fund. That's really a policy decision, a philosophical decision that's been made by the city council to transfer those dollars and ensure that both stay solvent. As you know, your customer base for water and wastewater is very similar, not exact, but very, very, very similar. And so the council's made, at least from staff's perspective, you told us very clearly this is the direction at least you want to continue. This is a 2-year budget cycle. As Sally said, in the third quarter, we'll come back in the third quarter of 2019 to provide an update where you are in the year and talk about the capital purchases. You'll see in the capital purchase plan for 2020, we have some listed out there, and we'll see how everything gels together at that point. But our goal is to make sure that we're touching you a couple of times, even when you do a 2-year budget. One of the ideas or plans behind, points of emphasis behind having a 2-year budget is so that we have a little bit more predictability for your customer base on what's going to happen with rates. And so this is one of the goals that we're trying to strive for, and I think this helps do that. It doesn't necessarily guarantee that, but it can certainly help do that.
Okay. Anyone else? Comments? The resolution adopting the 2019-2020 water fund budget appears on page 95. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Now, any questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Curran.
Aye.
Peterson.
Aye.
Councilmember Conley.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Paris.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have the 2019-2020 wastewater fund. Sally.
Again, Mr. Mayor and Council, I'm here for the two-year 19 and 20 wastewater budget. Again, that starts on page 96 and ends on page 118. Operating expenses, again, are similar to what's been approved in 2018. A slight decrease, 0.03% for 19, and 2020, we're projecting a 2.5% increase. Revenues are projected to be up 1% or 41.7 thousand from the 2018 projected year end, and 2020 is flat with 19. Again, no proposed rate increases for 19 or 20. If a reduction in rate is the goal, it is important to remember that lower revenues mean less transfer to the general fund. And as we talked about, they're covering some of the water transfers at that point. So if the transfer changes significantly in any year, the general fund levy would need to be adjusted to make up for those dollars to keep the overall plan in balance. No increases for the proposed next 2 years. Reminder, grants, loans to construct wastewater treatment plant requires a reserve of 10 cents per 1,000 gallons treated each year. This is reserved for meeting future capital needs and is identified as the restricted reserve amount in the budget documents. Wastewater, again, on page 25, excluding reverse osmosis, we have the usage in there, and again, that fluctuates up and down, but it's pretty consistent year over year, not huge swings. The 2019 capital projects are planned to include 386,000 and are funded from reserves. The 2019 and 2020 capital list below, the 2020 and beyond is on page 105. So for 2019, we're looking at the North Interceptor phase, which will be 60,000. That was planned for 2018, did not get done, so we're pushing it into 2019. The engineering and demolition of the North Lift Station for 30,000. We'll do an engineering plan in 2019, and then we're planning demolish right now as a placeholder in 2020. Miscellaneous engineering for 20,000. AMI metering for 50,000. Trash system, collection system trash pumps for 6,000. Replacement equipment at the water treatment facility for 40,000. Replacement equipment at the lab for 10,000. BAF blowers for a total of 8 to be replaced, 1 per year at 50,000. The North Lift pumps for 35. A 2002 pickup truck for 26,000. A 2013 John Deere tractor, a third of it for 4,000. That's split between all 3 funds. Public Works building improvements for 15. A mini cam for 10,000, and a John Deere riding lawnmower, 1435 Series 2 for 30,000. Again, as I said, we'll come back third quarter and review the 2020 spend for capital. It's in your packet, but we'll come back as we find out what happens in 19, what gets done, and what we need for 2020. Other miscellaneous items, St. Peter High School, Community Spirit Park, wastewater infrastructure will also be funded by contributions from parkland dedication. Any deficit will be covered by the utility fund. Wastewater transfers, again, are at 6.5% of gross sales to the general fund. This percentage has been in place for a number of years. The 2019 and 2020 proposes the 6.5 plus 200,000 to transfer to general fund. Like the water fund, future public facilities authority projects may have an impact on these transfers. Current debt issues, we have the 870,000 2010B. Debt service for that from the wastewater fund is 37,852. Remaining debt is 35,035. Final payment in 2020 on that one. There's a water treatment facility from 2001. Debt service on that in 2019 is 735,207. Remaining debt is 1,426,000. Final payment of that will be in 2021. We have another sewer revenue plant, 2002 for the water treatment facility. Debt service on that for 2019 will be $341,500. Remaining debt on that is $984,000 with the final payment in 2022. We have a sewer revenue note, 2004 for the water treatment plant. Debt service on that is $170,854 for 2019. Remaining debt is $479,000, final payment in 2022. And then we have a 2012A water treatment fund. Debt service on that one is $100,474 for 2019. Remaining debt is $1,530,000. Final payment is in 2043. As you can see, there is significant debt decreases by 2022 of $731,000, almost 54%, and again another $513,000 in 2023. In 2024, debt will maintain payments of approximately $100,000 yearly. The decrease in debt service payment is a significant driver that allows us to transfer funds to support the water fund. Other wages, again, basically a 3% increase for the 2 years and projecting about a 10% medical. Those are the big drivers. Any budget item over $10,000 will need city council approval. We'll come back to you throughout the year as we always do based on our policy. There are no personnel additions planned in this budget, nor do we have any new programs or substantial changes in operations. And then, as I said, we're still developing a service line insurance program is still pending. In 2017, we entered into an equipment lease agreement with Ameresco for a total of $2,650,000. The $2,650,000 is split between the electric fund and the wastewater fund. The wastewater fund is we're getting new UV lights at the water treatment plant, so that's why the wastewater fund is funding some of that. The wastewater fund is funding $905,043 of the $2,650,000. The fund payment for 2019, the wastewater portion is $61,002. The remaining principal on that is $836,867. Final payment is in 2037. We have not targeted a reserve amount for this fund. The wastewater fund has an unrestricted cash balance without the restricted funds required for plant improvements of $1,559,120 projected at the end of 2018. With the changes approved in rates, the fund will has been moving in a positive direction since 2015. We want to be transparent with the idea that we have used about the relationship between water and wastewater funds. Again, one of the easiest ways to keep water funds from escalating is to transfer resources from wastewater, which will soon have its debt service paid, and the water fund will help the water fund to offset the debt. If the wastewater continues in this direction, we'll have significant funds that are planned to be used to help the water budget. Continuing this plan will help diminish the need to increase rates in the water fund. Again, transferring revenues that had been previously used to pay off debt. The wastewater fund will have a projecting ending balance of $167,355 restricted and unreserved at the end of 2019, with a budget of $3,706,731. In 2020, the ending fund balance will be $1,903,164 with unrestricted and reserved, and projected with a budget of $3,800,715. We will continue to analyze our cash position, sales, and expenditures and provide an understanding of the risk in the future. Current rates are $11.23 per 1,000 gallons with a base charge of $4.65 for residential. No additional rate change during the 2019-2020 cycle is being recommended. It should be noted that other communities are starting to catch up to our rates. We are asking for the approval of the resolution for the wastewater fund budget on page 119 of the packet. The 2019 budget for wastewater for 2019 is $3,430,938, and for 2020 is $3,397,927. With the approval of the budgets, will give the city a plan to work towards. And again, any additional any purchases or initiation of projects over 10,000 will be presented individually to the city council for your approval going forward. Questions?
Questions, clarifications?
I have just a couple.
Go ahead.
As I look through the list of wastewater gallons sold on page 96, I'm really struck by how little that varies over time. But I guess that makes sense in that this is not weather dependent the way that water is. So if you look on page 71, the water consumption billing history varies quite a lot, 305 million to 383 million within a couple years. But wastewater doesn't vary as much, so that probably gives us a lot more certainty in projections for wastewater versus water. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think it is fair, Councilmember Carlin. Again, with water, probably the largest variation that we see relates to the amount of water that flows through people's outdoor spigots based on, as Sally indicated, whether or dry season,
Weather
people are
system,
sprinkling
yeah.
their lawn or
Exactly.
doing other things. I would tell you that, as you may be aware and as members may recall, you've made some significant infrastructure improvements, really a lot more 3+ years ago, 5, 7 years ago, on reducing inflow and infiltration, what we call I&I.
Right.
And so that's had a significant impact. It is important to note that phase 4 of that plan in the ditch along Old Minnesota, or along Highway 169 that we talk about, that we have about $60,000 set aside, is a continuation of that 5-phase plan. We really tried to attack that area because there was significant inflow able to be calculated there, and we've really based that capital expenditure on, can we save a significant amount of money by not treating water when we have high river levels, because that area takes on water.
Right.
And if the piping isn't really, really solid, then we take on river water into the system that we have to treat. Because the wastewater treatment plant doesn't know the difference between
Right.
water from your shower and water from the river when it's in the big
Right.
pipe. It doesn't know. And so that's some of the basis. And you, as you articulated, the numbers have been pretty consistent here over the last few years. So we feel good about that estimate.
So second question that's related to the first. As I was looking through these, of course, this is a list of the gallons sold to customers.
It's
and it
not
notes-
exactly a list of the gallons treated.
Right, because it doesn't account for the gallons that we treat. We treat our own effluent coming from the water treatment plant, the reverse osmosis system,
Yes.
comes into the wastewater system.
Yes, it does.
How do we account for that? Do we bill back to water for those gallons, or how do we account for the expense of those gallons? Does that make sense?
Yes, so that is billed back and is part of the cost of water operations.
Okay,
We have meters on the system there, so when water flows through to do the cleaning and take care of the reverse osmosis system, that's calculated and billed against that.
perfect. Thank you.
Excuse me. The resolution adopting the 2019-2020 wastewater fund budget for the amounts, I'm going to say them because there's a lot of different numbers thrown around here. For 2019, for $3,706,728. For 2020, for $3,800,715. That resolution appears on page 119. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved?
Seconded.
Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Garland.
Aye.
Mayor Zimmer.
Aye.
Councilmember Connolly.
Aye.
Councilmember Piper.
Aye.
Councilmember Ferris.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have the 2019-2020 stormwater fund budget. Sally again.
This begins on page 120 of the packet and goes through 140. Operations for 2019 and 20 are very similar to what was approved for 2018. Again, no rate changes. However, rates will very likely be necessary to increase to cover future debt service on anticipated projects. Current rates, along with future parcels included within the city limits, will not sustain a positive reserve. In addition, I believe that the future capital improvements needed to support needs to be supported by either assessments at some level. The city does not have the appropriate rules and process in place to provide for these. The city does have appropriate rules and processes in place to provide for these assessments. Wages, again, 3% increase, 10% for medical. Stormwater continues to contribute 6.5% of the gross sales to the general fund for 2019 and 20. With the issuance of the new National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit, the city can expect to see additional stormwater requirements imposed. These are mandatory changes, continue to require the city code regulations which place measurable and enforceable standards on the city's stormwater discharges. In addition, we believe that maintenance and requirements needed to increase in effort to lower levels of nitrogen and to suspend solids and phosphorus into the system. Capital projects in the upcoming year for 2019 are listed on page 129. Again, these are 2019. We're going to design and rebuild North 3rd Street from Chatham Street to Scarrow to enhance stormwater structures. That's estimated at $77,300. We will continue to rebuild 1 or 2 intersections each year. We have some miscellaneous engineering for $6,500, public works improvements for $5,000, community spirit park improvements for $10,000, the John Deere lawn tractor, which is split between the 3 of them, for $4,000, an aerator for $3,000, and an electric cart for $14,000. Again, we'll come back in late 3rd quarter of 2019, review our 2019 spending and our 2020 capital projections. Again, there's placeholders out there. There's a 10-year capital plan in the packet that you can look at. There's only one debt in this fund, and that's the $870,000 utility reserve, 10,000B. There's a debt service on that of $22,550,094, with remaining debt of $21,125. Final payment of that is in 2020. Current monthly rates. Last increase in 2007 are all based on the premises of $22.50 per acre per month, and each category has a residential equivalency factor assigned to it to calculate. So a single family home, it's about 1/3 of an acre, so each family home has $7.50 per month being charged to it. There's an $11.25 per acre for manufacturing housing parks, private schools, and the Minnesota Regional Treatment Center. $22.50 per acre for multifamily parcels greater than 5 units, churches, government, and churches and government. $33.75 per acre for industrial, and $39.38 per acre for commercial and business. I've done some calculations based on possible rate increases in the future. A 50-cent increase residential, which is really 1/3 of that would be charged to the actual consumers for the homes, which would be about 16 cents, would drive about $5,179. And for the other parcels, about $4,775, for a total of $9,954 per year. So this fund is, it's hard to raise enough money to cover our debts and some of the other things. So we've got to look at different ways of doing it going forward. Even if we did a 10% increase on those, total impact for a year would be less than $46,000.
Members, we know that this is something that you want to talk a little bit about more in the future, not necessarily significant to your approval of the budget today or not, but certainly we understand that the assessment process is something that you want to talk a little bit more about, so we certainly will be doing that. And then that residential equivalency factor was brought up at your workshop, and so our goal is to do a couple things in relation to that. See where other communities that are similar to yours are at, whether they're doing an REF or not, whether they may have some other system. You also wanted to see some analysis how this impacts from classification to classification. So as an example, there's really two analysis in my mind that are going on. As an example, a comparison between a residential property owner and a commercial property owner. Does the residential equivalency factor make sense based on pervious and impervious surface in each of those? Is the 50% of total or third of 33% of total, does that still make sense? Does that still ring true? And then how are other communities doing it with certain classifications? And so that's certainly more information we're going to bring back to you. The reason that we don't know that that's significant today related to the 2-year budget cycle that we have in place is because, as you can see on the bottom of page 21, any change that you make there, unless it's monumental, really doesn't drive your revenues significantly in this area. And so what's critical to this fund going forward is that if you make significant capital improvements, you're going to have to find resources, and that's likely primarily done through an assessment process of affected properties. So if you build the new basin, as an example, those properties that contribute to the new basin help pay a significant amount of the capital cost towards that basin. So again, we know those are discussions that you're going to have going forward, and we think they're very, very important, but probably not significant relative to this 2-year budget cycle at this point.
Okay.
Do you have more, Sally? You done?
Based on the proposed budget, it is anticipated the cash position will decrease from a projected unrestricted balance of $440,919 at the end of 2018 to an estimated $398,768 at the end of 2019, and with projected on-hand cash at the end of 2019 is $438,343. This reflects 63% of the 2020 operational budget. Future improvements such as the Brown Street and Drentel Street basins could be covered with assessments or tax increment financing. The budget anticipates using $119,800 of reserves to fund capital for 2019 purchases and $392,800 of the reserves to fund capital purchase in 2020. 2020 does include $240,000 for the Drentel Street basin. A bond issue is planned to fund that project. According to the 10-year capital plan, after 2019 purchases and annual capital costs range between $139,100 and $612,400. This is going to continue to reduce reserves of this fund and without future rate adjustments or assessments. The 2021 budget will be a reasonable time to review these rates and our future plans for stormwater improvements. The challenges we face in this fund are driven by the cost of additional development and changes in the rules and regulations related to stormwater treatment and how developments could occur. The budget includes lots of placeholders and allows us to plan ahead, but frankly, we do not know when or exactly to the extent that these activities will take place. There's a resolution approving the 2019-2020, including capital, in the amount of $814,634 for 2019 and $1,328,942 for 2020 on page 141.
I want to provide one other point of emphasis based on what Sally said. Again, you have some pretty significant capital expenditures that are likely to move forward in your stormwater fund. As she said, we don't know whether that's really 19 or 20. The biggest ones are budgeted in 20. They aren't part of your budget right now as impacting rates. And so as we move forward, those are really looked at as placeholders, just so that you're aware they could come forward. And as Sally indicated, the need to generate revenues either through some rate change or through assessments is going to be part of a very critical discussion that we have in advance of moving those large infrastructure projects forward. They aren't just capital, they're infrastructure. It's building ponds and things like that. There's a lot of work that needs to occur before that happens, so this won't sneak up on you, but it's important that we have those discussions as we move forward.
But that's the basic reasoning for the 500,000 plus increase.
From 19 to 20?
Yeah.
That's correct. It's really driven by, again, in our capital improvement plan, but it's not buying a piece of equipment. It's developing physical infrastructure, ponds, et cetera.
Right.
speaking of that, the Brown Street Basin, can you remind me what the catalyst was for that if we just start it?
The Brown Street Basin is really going to be driven by additional development in the area of Shopko. That's
Right.
kind of the trigger for that,
Right.
Councilmember Paris. And so we'll see, we continue to have folks that visit with us about potential development in that area, and so we'll see. I'd rather talk to you about it early and from a financial perspective, have it put off, but certainly we want to see development, commercial development in that area too. And so these things all go hand in hand.
Right, we're not going to do it just to do it.
We're not going to do it just to do it. We've been in the position of trying to ensure that we update our costs as we move forward. But if something happens, we don't want it to be out of the blue for you either, and how it impacts this fund.
And the same thing would be said about the St. Julian Roundabout I see here for $122,000.
That's exactly correct. We've had discussion on many occasions about that, and that really is driven by development in that area. Let me expound on that just a little bit, and it goes beyond stormwater fund, but certainly a lot of it has to do with stormwater fund. I think my belief is that the council has been very direct with staff and has said, if we see this thing coming down the pipe, if we see it coming in the future, let's have that discussion and be ready for that. Let's not do it too early, but let's not do it too late. And as an example of too late is, if we have a number of pieces of development that occur over the next 2 years, maybe it's a new food establishment or some other retail or commercial establishment there. We prefer not to be, we being the city, prefer not to be in the position of, private development comes in, builds these new facilities, they start operating their businesses, and now a year later we come in and say, oh, by the way, the roadway kind of in front of your spot is going to be closed down for 4 months or so after you've just opened, oh, by the way. We want to avoid those kind of things, and so be appropriately placed in a timeline in advance of that development.
Right.
That's a really tough bullseye to hit, but we'll certainly do our best to try and hit that, because we don't always know when private development is going to occur, and sometimes their timeline is long, and sometimes it's very short.
Right, so, because the three of them at $812,000, it's not something small.
It's
Whenever I see it,
significant, yeah.
Right, the two that we have slated for Brown and then
Yeah.
the St. Julian.
Again, it's Brown Street and the St. Julian road work and some of that engineering, certainly both are driven by development. We have great cost estimates on both of those. That's a little bit different than what we see in some of the other projects, which are a little bit less tangible and could move as far as their pricing goes based on the area that's being served and accessible property.
So Todd, for people watching saying, hey, you said Shopko and, this would be in that area, what does Shopko have now?
Shopko has a temporary basin which is located just north of their driveway, just north of the sidewalk that runs through to Hallett's Pond. And so that's an area that was planned by the developer for a temporary basin. If there's additional development, that temporary basin goes away and a new basin, a permanent basin is established near and including the right-of-way of Brown Street. For those folks that might be watching and wondering, where the heck is Brown Street? I've never seen a sign for Brown Street. Oh, God, probably the easiest way, and I even hesitate to say this, but some people drive by and they ask us, what the heck is that mannequin dressed in a flashy gold costume? Where that's very near the Brown Street area.
That's a mannequin?
I think it is. It hasn't been that cold yet for somebody to be frozen there, but yeah, that's kind of that general vicinity. And so there's a pond that would be developed that supports, forgive me for not remembering the acreage, but a pretty double-digit acreage in that general area.
1.6, I think,
Yeah.
something like that. Anyway, yeah, just wanted to.
Roger, did I answer your?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? The resolution adopting the 2019-2020 Stormwater Fund budget appears on page 141. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved?
Second.
Any more questions or comments? Call the roll.
Mayor Seaman. Councilmember Bowman.
Aye.
Councilmember Piper.
Aye.
Councilmember Paris.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Farley.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Thank you, Sally. Next up, we have a transit drug alcohol plan update. Todd?
Mayor and members, included in your package is information starting on page 143 related to this. I want to be really clear from the get-go that this has to do with transit only, not your other commercially licensed drivers, so this really relates to transit. This is based on, or your policy is based on a DOT policy, Department of Transit, Minnesota State Transit, Department of Transit template that we've utilized for a number of years. There are some decisions that the council has made as a part of this, but this latest round of changes is really generated by a statewide audit that was done by the Federal Transportation Administration of transit systems within Minnesota to make sure that they're within compliance, and so they recommended a few changes that we're following up on. I think that's very important for you to understand as a part of this. The reason that it's something that comes before you and not the Minnesota River Valley Transit Board is that you provide all the employees, you're contracted to provide employees to that transit authority. And so they're your employees, so it's a policy that you should have in place. The new draft of the policy starts on page 144 and goes for a number of pages. There are not significant changes to the policy overall, a few tweaks here and there. As the federal audit occurred, one of the things that you'll see, as an example, on page 159, you'll see in section B there, under prohibited substances 5B, you'll see some areas that are underlined. The feds wanted to be very clear that there are choices that local jurisdictions, local units of government make that are not part of their rules. Any areas that you see that are underlined here are decisions that you've made. Now, these are not new decisions. You've made these previously, but they're shown here as underlined because the feds, frankly, really wanted to see it underlined to demonstrate that it was not their decision, but your decision. Again, this isn't a change from your previous policy other than the underlining. Just to give you an example of some of the changes that have occurred. I'm happy to try and answer questions as best I can about what dilute means, about how testing occurs. We have a lot of experience with this. About what random testing is and how that works for the drivers on the transit system. I think it's really important to note for folks that are watching that transit drivers that you provide to MRVT, the Minnesota River Valley Transit, are tested on a very regular basis. And in fact, the number of folks that we test has gone up based on the new federal regulations that started to be in place here at the beginning of 2019. And so we want to make sure that your drivers are as safe as they can be related to their skill set, but also ensuring that they're complying with the rules relative to drug or alcohol use, and that includes drugs that are prescribed by their physicians. We also have some clarification within the document on page 161 going into 162 related to who provides services for this and who manages the policy. And so there's a couple small changes there that probably aren't significant to the council, but I wanted to make sure that we point out. Failure to adopt the changes could jeopardize the funding for MRVT. The feds may say that since you are not being compliant with their rules by following the audit modifications that they expect, that dollars would not flow. Just to be clear, you receive very, very few dollars directly from the Federal Transportation Administration. Most of those dollars flow through the Minnesota Department of Transportation to you, but this could jeopardize those dollars. It would ultimately impact you in the end. And as you know, about 80% of the budget for MRVT is provided by grant dollars through the state of Minnesota. About 20% is produced locally through fares. And so it's not an insignificant amount of money that we're talking about here if you don't comply with what they're looking for you to comply with. The resolution to approve this policy is on page 166. And if you approve the policy, all of your drivers get a copy of this. They've all seen it or had the opportunity to see it previously based on their training, and they know what's going on with it. But they'd all receive a copy of that and information and additional training if necessary.
Okay. Questions?
Just to clarify, you mentioned that this set of rules is specifically for our transit drivers. We have a personnel policy that applies to all staff within the city that also covers drug and alcohol and substance issues. So the fact that this is for our transit drivers doesn't mean we're not addressing those issues for the rest of the
Correct.
community. There
Yep.
are other documents for
Yeah. And it is also important to point out, and I was maybe too clear, or not clear, as the case may be, we have a couple of other employees that are included as a part of this policy because they work in safety-sensitive functions relative to work that goes on within the system. So, just so that you're aware of that.
Anyone else? The resolution adopting the updated FTA drug and alcohol testing policy for the City of St. Peter Transit employees. Is the City of St. Peter or is it MRVPT? The City of St. Peter?
City of St.
Yeah.
Peter,
All
hopefully
right.
it says that.
Yes, it does.
Yep.
I was
They're
just
employed in St.
wondering,
Peter.
operates the, okay, thank you. Appears on page 166. Is there a motion for approval?
So
Aye.
moved.
Oops. Second it.
Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Quinn.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Paris.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Mayor Zimmerman.
Aye. Resolution is approved. Next up, we have a council out-of-state travel authorization. Do you want to start this one?
Yeah, Mayor members, as you know, it is the policy of the council and also state statute that if there's out-of-state travel for elected officials, it has to be approved by the entire council. In the past, you've provided opportunity for additional education and work related to primarily your electric fund at the APPA legislative rally in Washington, D.C. In the past, you sent your public works director and 2 or 3 elected officials. The estimated cost for this is about $6,000, and we do have funding provided within the electric fund. And so we're recommending that council members Kwame and Carlin be approved as the elected officials to travel out of state. This occurs the last week of February. Resolution is included within your packet on page 168.
Questions or comments? That resolution, Scott said, is on page 168 for authorizing elected official travel. Is there a motion for approval?
Move the resolution.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Call the roll.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Paris.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Mayor Zimmerman.
Aye.
Councilmember Quinn.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have a new license application.
Mayor members, that information starts on page 169. As you may recall, your policy is that new license come to you as a part of a separate agenda item under new business. Renewals come to you as a part of the consent agenda. This is a new license or a new owner of Taco John's, David Paul, who's a co-owner and partner of Taco John's IBB, and they submitted an application for soft drink license. We do the appropriate background check according to your city ordinance, and we find no reason to withhold or prohibit them from being issued a license. Resolution approving this license is on page 170.
Okay. Questions?
Todd, is it a pretty high bar for the city to grant a soft drink license?
It depends on your definition of high bar, John.
So they're
But-
doing an investigation, what would he have to, how bad would you have to be to not qualify for a soft drink license?
In this instance, pretty bad. Yeah. And so it's not only, it's really driven by convictions in some area. There's a lot of reasons why you do soft drink licenses
But
in this area.
all this is spelled out in writing in our policy somewhere in the
It is within your ordinance.
ordinance?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Resolution approving the soft drink license application appears on 170. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Any other questions? Call the roll.
Councilmember Paris.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Mayor Zimmerman.
Aye.
Councilmember Quinn.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next, we have a polar plunge request.
Mayor, members, included in your packet, starting on page 171, is a memo and a request from the Office of the Sheriff within Nicollet County. As you know, for a number of years, the Sheriff's Department and Sheriff Lang have promoted a Special Olympics Polar Bear Plunge fundraising event. It's always been, the general same time frame within the calendar year and sometimes connected with Winterfest and sometimes not. This request provides for asking authorization for use of Hallett's Pond, and really for a couple of larger things, which are the city cutting the ice and removing the ice in the area where they plunge. If some of you have done it, we're really excited for you for this year. It's a wonderful event. And we also provide bleachers for the event and some other technical assistance. They are required to have insurance. You require $1.5 million of insurance, liability insurance for this and lots of other activities that occur on city property. And this is frankly on city property, so it's appropriate that you review this and provide approval if you so desire. The resolution is on page 173.
Questions?
So we've always,
John, you have a question?
you've always put pressure on our, maybe not on this mayor, but previous mayors to take the plunge.
It-
Um,
It's true. I have a longstanding offer that if the mayor plunges, I'll plunge. But
well, I
unfortunately,
was wondering maybe the whole council should just go in together.
well, I'm
I'm
going to
always
be
in.
out of town this year on February 2nd,
Hold
so
it.
unfortunately, I can't hold
What
up
is
my
the
half
date?
of the bargain.
February 2nd, right?
Yes.
And it's Groundhog's Day. I cannot be there, so you're Mayor Pro Tem. There you go. Don't forget your cinder block.
I'll change my travel plans.
Anyway, any other questions, John? That resolution, once again, authorizing use of Allen Pond for bear plunge, over plunge. 173, is there a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Any other questions? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Brown.
Aye.
Mayor Ziegler.
Aye.
Councilmember Quinn.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Paris.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have a resolution calling for a closed session.
Mayor, members, that resolution is on page 174. This is for all 5 of your bargaining units, so this would include police officers, communication technicians, who we commonly call dispatchers. It includes your streets group, your utilities group, and your parks group. My goal is to have a closed session to discuss the final negotiations on each of these, and I anticipate that we are likely to come back into regular session to approve one, if not all, of the contracts that are a topic of the closed sessions. And then you have additional meeting after that point.
Okay. Any questions? The resolution calling for a closed session for union negotiations, labor negotiations, for law enforcement, local 241 police officers, for law enforcement labor services, local 242 communication technicians, for the International Union of Operating Engineers, local 70, for streets, utilities, and parks, appears on page 174. Is there a motion for approval?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Questions or comments at this time? Call roll, please.
Councilmember Brown.
Aye.
Mayor Ziegler. Councilmember Quinn.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Paris.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. If we could get everyone to cooperate, and we will come back in. It is 8:25 p.m. on Monday, January 14th, 2019. Todd, first up we have is the contract negotiations with the Streets Department.
Mayor, members, included on your council desk here and provided to everyone else who's in attendance at the meeting is a recommendation from my office related to entering a contract with the Streets Group. This is for a 2-year contract, the 2019 and 20 year. It would be a 3% wage increase in each year of the contract, and there are always some technical changes or dates or type of name changes, that kind of stuff, but no other significant changes related to this contract. The memo's on page 174A, and the resolution is on page 174B. Again, this would be for streets.
Okay. Questions? Todd said that resolution appears on page 174B for the Streets Department. Is there a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Can we change the final whereas to 2019?
Thank you. Yes, that should be 19.
That'll be the same amount.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that. If I can speak up. Oh, dear.
Any other comments? Call the roll, please.
Mayor Zena.
Aye.
Councilmember Guane.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Barros.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have the contract between the city and the Utilities Department. Todd.
Mayor and members, information is provided in your packet on page 174C. This would be for a 2-year contract. This is slightly different than the previous one you discussed. 3% wage increase in each year of the contract for the folks that are water, wastewater, stormwater, the foreman, and miscellaneous other positions. The difference here is a 2.9 plus $1 in each year of 2019 and 2020 for the electric foreman and the licensed lineman. The reason that this is slightly different than what you see in many of the other contracts is frankly trying to continue to move this group to be more competitive within the lineman and line foreman marketplace, which we lag. The resolution is included in your packet on page 174D and change the date on the last whereas to 2019.
Resolution, again, approving the contract between the city and the utilities appears on 174D. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments?
Just one clarification. I want to make sure I understand correctly. So there will be a $1 increase in 2019 and a $1 increase in 2020?
2.9% plus $1
Right,
in
right.
19, 2.9% plus $1 in 2020.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Any other questions? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Guane.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Barros.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Mayor Zena.
Aye. Resolution is approved. Next up, we have the contract between the Parks Department and the city. Todd?
Mayor and members, this again is different than the previous two in that this is for a 1-year contract. This is for the 2019 year. It would be for a wage increase for all the employees at 3%, with the exception of groundskeepers 4 and 5, who will receive a 1.5% increase. Groundskeepers 4 and 5 are the most tenured, the longest tenured employees in the groundskeeper group. Happy to answer questions related to this. We do have technical changes, dates, names, etc., that we change as we spy those. And this, as along with the other contracts, have been agreed to by the Parks Group.
Questions? Comments? The resolution for the contract between the city and the Parks Department crew appears on 174F. Is there a motion for approval?
Make a motion to approve.
And I'll second.
Any questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Barros.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Mayor Zena.
Aye.
Councilmember Guane.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have the contract between the police officers in the city. Todd?
Mayor and members, a 2-year contract, the 2019 and 20 years, 3% in each of those years. Technical changes as appropriate. LELS has, the officers voted to approve this contract and meets the parameters set for the 2019 budget year.
Questions? Resolution appears on page 174 for the contract between the city and the police officers. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Now, any questions?
She wasn't going to let me have that second.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Barros.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Mayor Zena.
Aye.
Councilmember Guane.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Last one is the resolution approving for the city and the Communication Technicians Union.
Mayor and members, we commonly refer to this as our dispatchers. This is for 2019 and 20, so this is a 2-year contract, 3% in each year of the contract. Again, technical changes or typos as are appropriate meet the requirements that we have. The group has approved this contract. The resolution's on 174J.
Questions? The resolution between the city and the communication technicians appear on page 174J. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Now, any questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlin.
Aye.
Mayor Zena.
Aye.
Councilmember Guane.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Barros.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have a city administrator contract, and I have Mr. Brandt. Do you want to bring us up to date?
Thank you, Mayor and council members. This is a culmination of this process we started back in November. Back in November, we go through an annual review, that with the city council workshop. At the close of that, the evaluation showed that Todd was doing a very good job, that you were happy with him, that you were pleased with his work. You looked at the accomplishments that the city has done over the last year, and you were clearly satisfied with him, and instructed me to offer him a 3% raise and increase and extend the contract to 2022. I met with Todd and we discussed it. He was satisfied with 3% raise. He was satisfied with an extension of his contract. I believe he's also sent you a review of his comments and his review of your suggestions and comments. And with that, I'd recommend that you approve the resolution, the contract that's been set before you. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them.
Questions for Mr. Brandt or Mr. Prapke? So inclined? If not, the resolution modifying the city administrator's employment contract appears on page 178. Is there a motion for approval?
Move the resolution, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Curran,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Horn,
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer,
Aye.
Councilmember Paris,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Mayor and members. It's a pleasure to work here. Honored to work for your community.
That concludes our new business. Next up, we have reports. Really don't have anything to add.
Mayor and members, I have a few that I'll try and click through very quickly. First of all, next Monday is a holiday, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, so business offices, non-emergency offices will be open, but all the other offices will be closed on the 21st. Your next meeting will be a goal session that is on the 22nd, so if you don't have that on your calendar, please do. One other meeting that I want to mention is February 4th, although we haven't received the letter yet. I anticipate that February 4th you'll be invited to a Fire Relief Association meeting. You do this on a regular basis. Typically, it's that first Monday of the month in February, so I anticipate that coming, but I wanted to get that on your calendar. I know how busy you all are, and so be ready for that. You're likely to have a workshop that evening, but it'll be a relatively short one, and then move on to our meeting with the Fire Department and Fire Relief Association. Wanted to, let me get here. Martin Luther King Day, non-emergency offices, transit services will be operating. MRVT will operate as usual, and the community center is open for its usual hours. Our goal session again will be on the 22nd at 3 o'clock in this room. The next item I have is Pavilion Project. Just to give you a quick update, and some of you should have received, or all of you should have received this information. As some people have questioned, why aren't we tearing down the pavilion quite yet? One of the things that we've done as a part of the construction process, working with your construction manager or architect, is look at ways to continue to save money on the project. As you are aware, you bid the first phase of 2 phases, and that first phase was higher than we had hoped. We believe that we can save approximately $35,000 to $50,000 by moving the demolition timeline back a little bit, and so we're likely to pursue a change order at end of project to make that happen. That will not change the end date or the completion date. We believe that we can make that go forward based on what's available for the cement work, demolition work, and other work that's already been bid as part of phase 1. So I wanted to provide you an update and the community at large an update as well. I also wanted to mention, and I'm sorry that Pete is not here this evening. He's unable to be here this evening, but we have received the second RP3 designation, which is Reliable Public Power Provider. And so this is a set of standards and accreditations that we strive for to show that we're doing a great job within electric service within your community. So it's not just the kinds of service that we provide, but the reliability of the service that you provide. Within the next month or so, you'll see in the hot sheet and some other documents data related to our reliability measures, related to Xcel Energy, and maybe another couple of folks that are within our area. And as you know, over the past dozen years or so, your numbers have been fantastic related to reliability. Underground system, quality of system, frankly, the investments that you've made in people and in infrastructure, significant infrastructure improvements, make that reliability be really second to none within the state of Minnesota. And so achieving this RP3 designation is kind of that seal of approval that you're doing great stuff. So again, we'll have some more promotion on that within the near future. Starting in March and April, you'll see some more, but we're excited about that designation again this year. I also wanted to mention rental license renewals for landlords that have not gotten ready to have their inspection done in this cycle. My recollection is that we're about 40, 50, or 60 short of folks that should be participating in this, and so additional notices have gone out. So we want to remind landlords that they got to kind of make this move along, and if they don't, they risk not having their rental certificate, which means they can't rent any longer. And so this is a significant issue. We want to make sure that folks are moving along, and if they need help, we're happy to help them out. We streamlined the process quite a little bit over the last 3 or 4 years, the last couple of cycles. As you may recall, we used to do every year. Now we split it up into every other year. We fill out a lot of the documentation for them. We try and make it as easy as possible. So for landlords that are out there, you've got that notice kind of waiting on your desk, and you're kind of thinking, oh, what should I do? What should I do? Give us a call, schedule that inspection. Let's get that moving. We want to make sure that we're providing for safety for your tenants and make sure that everyone's happy with the process that's moving forward. One other meeting that I forgot to mention, I apologize, under upcoming schedule, is that we have a city-county liaison meeting this Thursday at 10:30. So for Councilmember Kwame and Councilmember Grams, who are appointed to that again for the upcoming year, that meeting is on Thursday, and you should get the agenda here tomorrow, I hope, is when the agenda will come out.
Right here.
Yeah, I don't know, Barb, do you remember? I don't remember off the top of my head. Yeah, if it's here, it might be in the Traverse District room. I just don't remember, but we'll make sure that we send that out to the appropriate folks and wanted to get that on your list. Mayor and members, I think that's all I have for this evening for reports.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to add? I did think of something while you were here talking about. We have there are 54 citizen positions open on boards and commissions. Openings. We have 52 of them filled. We still need someone, if anybody's out there interested, on tourism and one on heritage preservation. So if we do have anybody that has an interest in that, that's watching, or you guys know of anybody, let me know. If my numbers are right, those are, like I say, 52 out of the 54 filled for this next coming year. All right. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Roger, I'm glad you did that, because usually it's Jeff, and I thought, we're gonna sit here forever.
Oh.